What's up guys, my name is Lasha, and as you guys can see, I'm holding up a lot of books, and you might be wondering, what is this guy going to be talking about? So, it's my first YouTube video, and in this video I want to talk about a little bit about myself, do my official introduction for people who are going to be meeting me for the first time, and at the same time I want to show you guys some of my favorite books that I have read. So let's get into it. Before we get to the books, let's start off with the introduction. My name is Lasha. I am 25 years old. I live in New York, and I came to this country, United States, about 10 years ago. Even though I was born here, I was raised in country Georgia, Tbilisi, and I came back here to study, which, didn't go as planned, but that's a story for another time. So ever since I came here 10 years ago, I got here when I was about to turn 15. I have been living here. I've been going back and forth over like summer breaks and stuff like that, but most of my time I spend in the United States. I work here. I used to go to school here. So yeah, as you guys can probably tell from my accent, I learned English when I came to the United States. I went to sophomore year of high school without not zero words in my vocabulary, but it was pretty bad. I remember one time somebody asked me how the school was after our first day, and I couldn't form a sentence because I didn't know how to say it in English. So yeah, that's basically my introduction. I don't know if I'm supposed to say my height, weight. Am I? I'm 6'2". I don't know the weight. I haven't weighed myself in a while, but what I do and what's my occupation doesn't really matter, does it? I just like to read books, and I hopefully in the future my full-time occupation will be reading books and reviewing books, reviewing stories, and telling other people how I feel about them. Let's go back to the childhood, because my relationship with books was never good, or as good as it is right now. I remember over the summer breaks, I used to read books, but it was because my mother used to tell me to read books. There was nothing else. During that time in Georgia, internet was not a common thing. We didn't have computers laying around or phones laying around watching movies. We had to entertain ourselves. We had to go outside, play outside, and do a bunch of other things. So one of the ways that my mother thought I should spend my time was to read books, because she's a big reader. She used to be a big reader. She doesn't read that much anymore. But we had a whole library on our second floor in our village. So I used to go up there and read books. Was I really good at it, or was I paying attention? Not really. As a kid, unless you really love reading, then your mind is trailing off. You're falling asleep. It was a mess, to be completely honest. But that all changed about 2 years ago. For some reason, ever since I came to America, I was never really into school, as I mentioned before. I don't like doing homeworks. I don't like being told that I have to do something. So school was not my thing. College was not my thing either. And books, I never even thought about reading a book, because it was never considered as cool. But 2 years ago, at that time I moved out by myself, and one evening I just decided to order Harry Potter books. And as a kid, I was always obsessed with Harry Potter movies. It's my childhood, so it is really nostalgic to me. So I ordered these books. I ordered Harry Potter books, and once I received them, I read all 7 of the books in about a month and a half. And while I was reading them, I realized that I was feeling so much peace, and it was so entertaining to me. And it was almost like I was being absorbed in this whole new world that I haven't explored before. Because if you have seen the movies, Harry Potter movies, and if you have read the books, you will see a major difference between the two. Both of them are great in my opinion, but the books are so much more detailed. So after I was done with the series, I decided to order more books, and I ordered, I believe, Percy Jackson books, and it was another show. It was not a show at that time, it was a movie that I was obsessed when I was younger. So I decided to order Percy Jackson books, went through them all five, or I think there's six books, I don't remember correctly. Again, month and a half, 2 months max. It was amazing, enjoyed the whole experience. And now, after 2 years has passed, we are over here. And my love for classic literature or modern classics started from Jane Eyre. And I have this book somewhere here, I think. Hold up. Yeah, it's right here. Jane Eyre was a book that I used to read over the summer break in Georgia in our village because it is my mother's favorite book. So when I remember when I remembered that I used to read this book in Georgia, I thought to myself, what if you read it in English and you're familiar with the story, you remember some parts, and the only part that I remembered very clearly was Jane getting locked in the red room by her aunt. So that was engraved in my brain. So I decided to go with it. I picked it up, and at that time, my English, it was still not good. It was mostly slang. It was not ready for a challenging book like this. And now that I look back at it, yeah, Jane Eyre is not a super hard read, but it's not also really easy for someone whose first language is not English. So when I read this, I picked it up, I started reading it, and about 50 to 60 pages in, I gave up. I couldn't do it no more. I just thought to myself, you know what, this is not for you. Go back to something else, like choose a different book. And after that, I remember reading A Boy in Striped Pajamas and Frank's Diaries, like the typical classics that you get when you look up books I should read. So after I read those books, I built my vocabulary. I built a habit of sitting down and actually reading, because I think that's the most difficult part when you first get into reading, actually sitting down and containing yourself to read for 15, 20, 30 minutes, even an hour or 2 hours. So I built those habits, and after that, I went back to Jane Eyre and I finished it. And I loved every word, every page, every sentence of it. Actually, I reread this book last month for my book club, and it was a totally different experience. I feel like I got to explore Jane's character a little bit more deeper. Deep? I don't know. Yeah, you guys get the idea. There's going to be a lot of, glitching in these videos, so get used to it. So rereading Jane Eyre was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. Her character, how strong and how strong-willed she is. She is not going to give up her freedom, her desire to achieve something and be a strong human for nobody. It doesn't matter if it's for love, family, whatever it may be. She has her own life, and she will make sure that she gets everything that she deserves and wants. So Jane is one of my favorite, not only female characters, but favorite characters just in general. So after I was done with Jane, I decided to explore more classic literature. And I decided to go with East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Now, this was my first American classic. Yes, it was my first American classic. And again, I enjoyed every single page of this book. I think there was a lot of different themes that Steinbeck explores. And at that time, I didn't understand every single one of them. That's why a lot of the books I read earlier in my reading journey, I am rereading them right now to get a deeper and more clear understanding of what the authors were trying to tell me. You get it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do get it. East of Eden was a beautiful experience. It made me truly appreciate the art of writing books, if that makes sense. Like how some authors are able to sit down write books, and come up with this whole new world where you almost feel like you're part of it. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but East of Eden made me open my eyes to whole new world. And I'm using whole new world a lot and it's getting on my nerves, but it's like it was like burst of colors and oh my god, like this author is just opening my eyes. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying, but you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to relay in this message. Or do you? I don't know. But East of Eden, again, a really beautiful book. Everyone should read it at least once in their life, if not twice, to better understand it. And I think I will be rereading it next month, possibly. Depends if my book club is going to choose this as our March, April read. So we'll see. After East of Eden, I remember I was sitting down in my room and during that time, I have acquired a lot of different books that I knew I was going to read in the future. Every time I choose a book that I'm going to buy or I want to read, I think a lot about it and I make sure that I am 100% sure I will like that book because I'm not going to spend my money on something that I have doubts about because then I'm wasting money, I'm wasting space on my shelves, and I don't want to do that. So during that time, I acquired a lot of different books, and some of them were pretty big books. Like, I think I even got War and Peace, The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. A lot of different books, and one of those books was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Dumas, sorry. A lot of people get mad when I say Dumas, but it's a habit. It's Alexandre Dumas. We are French over here. But I remember I was staring at this book for a really long time, and I was genuinely scared to pick it up. Because at that time, again, all I had read was few books. The biggest one was Jane Eyre, which is barely 500 pages, if I'm not mistaken. So for me to jump into 1,200 pages, it was a really big deal. And don't get me wrong, before this I had read like smaller books. I think I read The Exorcist, some the twisted ones, some horror genre, some modern classics, but nothing classic where you should be a little bit scared of a book. So I decided to finally pick it up. I told myself, Lasha, you got this and you will be able to do it. Had some doubts, but I finally picked it up. And from the very first page, I realized how easy it was to read this book. The language, I think it's the translation also. This one is Bus. I keep forgetting his name. Robin, I think it's, yeah, Robin Bus. Robin Bus. Translation, which is your classic Penguin black spine copy. The other one I believe is the translation the Oxford Word Classics use, but I haven't read that one. I'm planning to read it next month to see the difference between the two. So after I started reading this book, again, now something different happened. Now I was kind of training myself to be able to sit down and read for hours and hours and hours. When I tell you I would sit down or lay down, move around, walk around while reading this book for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, I'm not even lying. And my reading speed at that time was pretty slow. I was reading books at a below average speed, so it would take me a really long time to finish a big book like this, or any book in general. So reading this book was one of the most enjoyable experiences I have ever had while reading a book, because it was so many different themes, characters. It was so entertaining, and also the language. It was really enjoyable for me to read a big book like this and be able to understand every single page that I read. And I think a story about revenge, love, betrayal can be really entertaining, but if it's not well written, then you're just not going to get into it. But when I tell you all 1,200 pages, I think 1,200 something pages of this book was worth every second of the time that I spent reading it. I'm not even exaggerating. I feel like every single person should read it. And when people ask me on my TikTok or in person what book they should start their reading journey with, I always tell them, if you're okay and if you're up for the challenge to read a big book and you know you're ready for it, go with Count of Monte Cristo. I mean, there's some other ones like some of Steinbeck's really short stories of Mice and Men, The Pearl. You got like a bunch of different books that are really short, but I like to recommend this one because first of all, it's really entertaining, it's really interesting, there's always something happening, and the language is pretty easy to understand. So The Count of Monte Cristo stays as my, I don't want to say number one favorite book that I have read because I will show you what's my favorite book, but it is definitely in my top three, if not my top two. This is my second best favorite, I guess you can call, book I have ever read in my life. So after The Count of Monte Cristo, what did I read? Oh, here. We got some Kazuo Ishiguro. Kazuo Ishiguro was one of those authors that I came across and I didn't expect to love as much as I did. I remember I started off with I started off with Never Let Me Go like any other person. It was a recommendation from all the TikTok videos, and at that time it was a really popular book. So I decided to pick it up, I read it, and I realized that the story was really interesting, really intriguing. You wanted to know what happens next, but it was not wow. It was not life-changing. But what was life-changing was the way Ishiguro writes. I think his sentences are most beautiful I probably have ever read in my life. And that might be an exaggeration because I still have yet to read a lot of beautiful books, I'm pretty sure. But I realized that every time I pick up Ishiguro's book, even though some of them can be a little too slow, like really slow, I pick them up because I want to experience a really beautiful writing. And that's the main reason I have read most of his books. Even The Remains of the Day. It's a book about a butler who is remembering his days with his previous employer. So at a first glance, the story seems pretty boring. At least if when I read the synopsis, it seemed really boring, but then I got into it and it was really slow, but the writing was one thing that kept me hooked. And then I came to realize this author is a Nobel Prize winner in literature. So it all makes sense. Every time or when people ask me for book recommendations, I try to hold off recommending Ishiguro's work because I don't know what the reason of them reading a book is. Like if they want like good writing, then I will recommend Ishiguro. But if they want entertainment or like different transforming into different world, like I said, I will never recommend Ishiguro. It's a very I don't even know what type of author it is. Like if you like his work, you will like it. There's no way around it. If you haven't liked Never Let Me Go, you will not like his other books. In my opinion, you might. I don't know. It's different for every person. After this, I have a book right here, but I don't know where it's at. Okay, I found it. We got Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. Haruki Murakami is a really interesting author, to say the least. It was my first book in magical realism genre, and I enjoyed it a lot. My first book by him was Kafka on the Shore, and I have heard about this book from some Georgian influencers actually. In Georgian, it translates to Kafka's Zwispiras, or I think that's how it translates. So I have heard about it somewhere. So every time I thought about it, I thought it was some philosophical, like something really deep. And at times it can be deep, you know, there's a meaning behind every book, but once I remember my reaction, and at that time I was listening to an audiobook because I was at work and doing something. I was listening to an audiobook and we got to the scene where our main character is on the train and meets this girl. And the description, the vulgar language that Murakami uses was really shocking to me because I have never come across anything like that in books. I have read some splatterpunk before this, but I knew what I was going for. But with Kafka on the Shore, I was expecting something totally different, and I was met with something really, really different and really strange for me at that time. After that, I was intrigued by his other works, such as Norwegian Wood, A Wild Sheep Chase, A Wind Up Bird Chronicles. And one thing I realized about Murakami's books is that they can be really entertaining. And I do really enjoy magical realism that he gives me. Like the fish falling from the sky, the talking cats. It is really supernatural. It is really magical, in my opinion. And I like the way he writes also about his characters. Okay, let's pause that. I know I like the way he writes about, like the way he structures his sentences. I think that's the best way to describe it, because we know he can be controversial when it comes to uh, him writing woman, and that's a discussion for a different time. But even right now, I'm reading one of his other book. It's called After Dark, and I'm enjoying it. It's one of those Murakami is one of those authors that I go for when I do not know what to read, because he's like always there to give me a story that I will enjoy and be entertained by. So I know he has a lot of haters, but unfortunately, I'm not one of them. What can you do? Next one is going to be, and I'm going to leave the best for last. Next one is going to be another big names in classic literature, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy was one of those authors I was always scared of ever since I got into reading. Obviously, before I got into books, I have heard about him. I grew up in Georgia, where books and literature is frequently talked about, and since it was part of USSR, we are familiar with Russian authors like Bulgakov, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, like many other ones, Pushkin. Every Russian author is really famous in Georgia. So I have heard about Tolstoy's name before, and I knew that he was one of the most famous Russian authors out there, along Dostoevsky. But I think Tolstoy at that time, for us, was more well known than Dostoevsky. Whatever, doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to say is that I knew his work to be really difficult and really big, as you can see. And Anna Karenina is honestly, I think, Tolstoy's most famous book that he has ever written. And when I got it, I remember I knew I was not going to read this book that I just bought for a really long time. And I was right. It was sitting on my shelves for 2 years, because it was one of the first books I bought, because I've heard about it. I knew what it was. I knew the author, and I knew I wanted to read it sometime in the future. So I got it. It was sitting on my shelves for 2 years, and then I finally read it. And to my surprise, the story was really easy to follow. It was really easy to follow. I saw a lot of reviews before I started reading this book, of people complaining about the names, that they're hard to remember. I guess it's the Georgian in me, and it's also the fact that I am familiar with Russian culture, Russian names. I didn't have a hard time with Russian names or pronunciation of Russian names, or the streets, the cities. Nothing like that was really challenging for me. And another thing I realized while reading this book is I have a easy time reading books that are translated from different language to English. I don't know what it is. like every time I read a book by American or English author, I have a little bit hard time understanding the vocabulary, but when it comes to translator work, it's really easy for me. Even when I read Crime and Punishment, it's a really dense book, and it took me a long time to read, but not intentionally. I just wanted to take my time with it and explore the characters and just absorb all the information. But in terms of language, it was not difficult for me to understand, and it was the same experience with Anna Karenina. I enjoy the story. I think it's one of those books that can seem really intimidating until you actually pick it up and start reading it. And one other thing I really enjoyed is how short each chapter was. Like, I don't know if you can see it right here. I'm trying to look at my monitor to see if it shows. But this chapter 20 to 21, is barely one page. No, 2 pages. So chapters being so short made reading this book really easy for me, because you're like, oh shit, I'm done with the chapter. That was super fast. Let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to the next one. And if you like to read before bed, it is actually really easy and much more enjoyable than having a chapter that's like 30 pages long. So you read a chapter, it's 2 pages, you move on to the next one, it's 2 pages, you're like, oh, these are short, and you keep going through them, and by the time you move on to the next chapter, you're at page 800 and you're done with the book. Other than that, the translation. Let's talk about the story a little bit more. But if you guys want like deeper reviews of each of these books, I'm more than happy to do that. The story I really enjoyed. I really liked Levin's character. I think he's a really interesting human being. And comparing Levin with Anna was also really interesting to me. Because their stories are so similar and so different at the same time. And another thing why I really loved Levin's character was because the type of life he lives outside in the farm, horses, cows, fields, that's the type of life I aspire to have and I want to have. So his character was really, really interesting to me. And at some point while reading this book, I started thinking to myself, why is this book called Anna Karenina? Why isn't it not called Anna and Levin, or Anna Karenina and Levin? I don't know. It was weird, but then when I finished the book, I realized why it is called Anna Karenina. Okay, it was a hard realization. Oh, it was a hard realization. Got it. So now the translation. When it comes to Russian books and Russian classics, I always choose Pivier and Volonovsky. I don't know if I'm saying those names. Richard Pivier, I know I'm saying that right, but Larissa Volokhonsky. I don't know why I always say Volonovsky. Larissa Volokhonsky. Yeah, that was easy. So I always go with their translations. But there's a book, if I can. Here it is. See? I don't even need to look. This is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Also, I don't know why I forgot about this book when I was saying Anna Karenina is his most famous work. War and Peace is his most famous work. Besides the point, I got this book, and it is translated by Anthony Briggs. For some reason, I don't know why the reason was, I really wanted to give a try to a different translator, because even Dostoevsky, Bulgakov, I have always read P and V translation. So I heard from someone that Anthony Briggs' translation for War and Peace was way better than Pivier and Volonovsky. Now, this is really inconvenient for me because then I have to read Pivier and Volonovsky translation to compare the two, because I am like that and I got it like that. But yeah, Anna Karenina was a beautiful reading experience. I am proud of myself to have read this book and to be able to say that I have read and understood Tolstoy's writing. I think it is a pretty big thing. At least it is for me. I don't really care about if it is for anybody else. And the last book is going to be, and this might sound really strange, and I have made countless videos about this book on my TikTok, and I have talked to a lot of different people about this book, and I have a lot of people reaching out to me saying that they have read this book because I recommended it and all the different things, you know. But going into it, and I'll show you the book, don't worry. Going into it, I didn't know what the story was about. I remember I grabbed this book when I was in Barnes& and Noble, and I got it because I just felt like spending money, and I wanted to, whenever I go book shopping, I either tell myself, you're gonna buy 5 books or 10 books, or like I give myself a specific number, and I have to get those number of books. If I'm not meeting those numbers, then I'm not getting anything at all. It's just a habit. I guess you can call it OCD or whatever. But at that time, I think I told myself I'm gonna get 5 books. I couldn't find nothing else. And as a 5th book, I grabbed this specific book. It was sitting on my shelves for a year and a half. And then one day I was at work or I was doing something and I decided to listen to an audiobook. And I saw this one and I knew I had it. Damn. And I knew I had it. So I got it. It was free for some reason. I don't know why. It was free. I started listening to it. I was done in 2-3 days. I just couldn't stop myself. It was playing in my ear 24/7. I loved the story so much. I loved every single character. And I also love what the book stands for. And funny thing is that I reread this book. Like that first time I listened to it, and I did both. I listen to my book sometimes and I read it, or I do it at the same time. Certain books I only do physical copies, certain books I only do audiobooks. I mix it up. If you don't like to mix it up, that's on you. But if you try to put other people down for mixing it up or doing only audiobooks or only physical, fuck you. There's no place for you over here. Honestly, not going to lie. Like everyone can have their own thoughts, but like if you start putting other people down, I'm getting sidetracked. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So good. So what I was saying is that last month, I decided to reread this book and only do a physical copy because I really wanted to annotate the book. So my book club was pretty excited to be reading this specific book, and reading it for the second time, it solidified its place as my favorite book I have ever read in my life. And it is Pachinko by Mingjing Li. I know it is strange, and this is my French cover. I got it while I was visiting my family. It's in French. I don't speak French. I don't read French. But instead of getting magnets for my fridge or keychains, I like to grab a book in the language of the country I'm visiting. So this is the book I'm talking about. This is my favorite book I have ever read. The thing is that I can admit that the writing in this book is not the most amazing I have ever read about, or that's the main thing, or it's not revolutionary. It's not something life-changing, or it does talk about a lot of meaningful stuff and a lot of important topics, and it is a historical multi-generational family saga, so it is really informative. But for me, why I love this book so much, especially after reading it for the second time, is because I realize how close I feel to each character. It's almost like they're part of my family. And I have said this same statement in my last TikTok. It's almost like I know them in person. So every time they go through something, I feel their pain, I feel their happiness. There was so many times when I was reading this book that I was sobbing my eyes out, especially the part where certain person, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but just know one thing: when you read this book, you will be crying your eyes out. And there's a lot of discussion surrounding this book. And when I finish a book, I like to go online or go on TikTok or different platforms and look up what other people think about it. I'm not going to let those reviews influence my thoughts, but I like to see if, you know, anyone else has anything interesting to add to the discussion that I'm having with myself in my head. And I saw a lot of reviews of Pachinko by Mingjin Lee and different type of criticism that this book got. Misogyny, sexism, a bunch of different things. And I think I'll make a video about it sometime in the future, but for now, know one thing. Pachinko is a really beautiful and important story to read about. It talks about a family migrating from Korea to Japan while China and Japan were at war, and the struggles of being an immigrant and facing a lot of different challenges in life just because of where you come from, just because you speak a different language, you look different from other people, and no matter how much time passes, you always will be picked on, and you will always feel like a less of a human because of your not upbringing, but of your ancestors, or of because of where you come from, or where your parents come from, or where your grandparents come from. So it is a really interesting and important book to read about. And with that, I think I am done. So honestly, I didn't expect to talk this much about anything, really, but I did enjoy it. I enjoy this format because on TikTok or Instagram, you have to talk for like a minute, 2 minutes, maximum 3 minutes, because after that, nobody really likes to watch your stuff. They just scroll away unless you talk about some drama, I guess. But I like that I can sit down here and talk about books and things that I really enjoy for how long now? 40 minutes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe. I don't know how things go on here, but I will most likely be uploading videos every week. Or at least I'll try my best to upload every week. Let me know what type of videos you guys want to see, and follow me on TikTok, Instagram. Both of them are Books by Lasha, and join my book club if you want to read with me and other people. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys next week.